scientist, neuroscientist, and I study the human brain. It's a complex and sometimes lethal machine.
If there's one thing Dr. Jim Fallon knows, it's the criminal mind.
In a blind experiment, colleagues sent me 70 MRI brain scans, and I had no idea who these brains belonged to. Some were normals, some were schizophrenics, and some were killers. I analyzed all of them, 5 of which I determined were the brains of psychopaths. And it turned out that indeed these 5 were the brains of serial killers.
The UC Irvine professor discovered in every killer's brain there's an undeniable pattern.
They all had their own fingerprint of brain damage, but they all had the same pattern underneath that, which is damage to this orbital cortex.
The orbital cortex at the forehead controls morality and compulsive behavior, and in every criminal, without fail, Fallon found an absence of any activity in that area.
It kind of cuts down on the probability that there's free will that we think there is.
Violent behavior, he concluded, is inherited.
The so-called warrior gene, monoamine oxidase A, that regulates, one of the ones that regulates serotonin, that this is passed from mother to son, which is one reason why there are many more males that are aggressive and violent and killers.
He couldn't have known it then, but a phone call from his mother would soon reveal the story he was telling was his own.
There was a book that was just published that your cousin gave me called Killed Strangely, and it's a story about your grandfather, great-great-great-great-grandfather.
Turns out, Fallon's family line is drenched in blood.
I looked into it, and it turns out I've been studying this and talking about it, and it's us.
An early ancestor, Thomas Cornell, for murdering his mother, was hanged in 1673. It was the first case of matricide in the colonies.
Since then, there were like 7 more murderers in that line.
200 years later, his notorious cousin Lizzie Borden was accused, then controversially acquitted, of killing her father and stepmother with an axe. Dr. Fallon, along with 9 family members, had his brain scanned. His parents, wife, and grown children's brains were normal. But his looked hauntingly familiar. It was an exact replica of the serial killers he'd been studying.
You'll notice that all the red is where these areas are very active and hot with PET scan. But this area, you notice in this person, is turned off in the orbital cortex as compared to the other people. Well, that's me. So I've got, and it turns out that that pattern's the same exact one that I've been looking at on all these killers.
Further tests then showed he also had violent genes.
Now I had these 2 things, but I'm not a psychopath. I'm not a killer.
This neuroscientist admits he has strange interests, but he's hardly masquerading as a killer.
My choice of painting is bizarre clowns and really sort of disturbing images.
If Fallon's brain is that of a born killer, then how did he escape his own DNA?
And my whole family's always been just wonderful to me. I mean, just showered me with love.
Fallon was shocked to discover something as unscientific as love changed his fate.
The idea that a really, really nurturing environment can offset that floored me.
Jim Fallon thought he knew the criminal mind, but the more he learns, the more he realizes.
The more wrong I'm getting, you know what I mean?
Human behavior has little to do with science.
It's not just about not being bad to your kids, but to really going out of your way to, showering them with love.